In college, there were classes I just didn't vibe with. Sunday scaries became a nightly ordeal, and it was a struggle to go to those classes because I hated them. Do I stick it out? Should I switch class? Was I being a complete drama queen? Because once we're in too deep, it's a lost cause. And there goes another semester where we feel miserable. So I'm gonna share my framework that helped me decide what to do if you hate your class. The first question to ask yourself is, why am I taking this class? If we don't have a strong reason why we do something, we lose interest and can easily develop negative feelings toward it. Like, imagine if you were volunteering as one of those door-to-door knife salespeople. But then you realize, 1, you don't like talking to people, and 2, you don't like sharp objects. You're probably not gonna stick with the gig. Taking a class you hate is even worse because you're paying tuition. You're putting in time, brain cells, and money for information that you don't care about. It'd be like paying for that privilege to sell knives. If you don't have any reason, or it's a stupid ass reason, like stalking the girl you've had a crush on who has a long-term boyfriend, then abort mission, drop the class. That was just an example. I've never done that. Good reasons would be if it's a prereq for medical school, law school, or some part of your degree, or you could just be genuinely interested in the topic and want to explore it further. Maybe someone told you it would be a super easy A. These are all reasons enough, so if you have an appropriate reason, then move on to the next question. What about this class makes me miserable? If you don't try to understand why you hate the class, you might end up switching into another class that you also hate. Don't repeat mistakes, try to learn from them. So an exercise I've done in the past is to write out every aspect of the class I dislike. Is it the professor? Like, are they too boring or scary or difficult to understand? Is it because the class is at 8 a.m. and your Kuma brain doesn't want to get out of bed until 2 p.m.? Is it because you have no friends in the class? Or is it because your lifelong bully is in that class? Is it because you have to attend class? Like, if they record lectures, you can also just consider not going. There were times I realized I didn't actually hate the subject, I just hated some logistical or unrelated component of the class. And if that's the case, I would just switch to another time slot or a different professor. Like, I even dropped a chem lab once so I could take it later with my friends because we wanted to pretend like we were part of Breaking Bad. Sometimes it's hard to pinpoint what we dislike about something, so in those situations, I reverse the question and ask myself, what are some classes I really loved? What about those classes got me excited to show up? If you can combine both of these exercises and compare and contrast them, you'll really clarify the ideal learning environment for yourself. But if you've identified a good reason for the class, and you've identified that you hate the class because of the material itself, then it's time to move on to the final question. Have I put in enough time and effort? I remember my first organic chemistry class was one of the most brutal courses I've ever taken. The first few days felt impossible, like I was completely lost. I felt dumb and insignificant, so for that reason, I hated going to that class. But after toughing it out for another week, something changed. It got easier. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be perfect the first time we try something. But the reality is that skills take time and consistency to develop. Those first OChem problem sets were incredibly difficult because I'd never been exposed to them before. I had no prior knowledge to fall back on to help me figure it out. But after repetition and practice, I slowly improved. So when the stress gets overwhelming, just remember this. It may not get easier, but you will get better. Especially if it's a required class that you can't drop. It's common to feel frustrated learning really challenging topics, and it seems like willpower alone won't be enough to get you going, which is true, it won't. So you also need to look closely at your study system and how you're approaching the information. What resources are you using to learn the information? Which videos, which study strategies? Robert Bjork came up with this idea called desired difficulties. He found that effective learning happens at a sweet spot, where the learning isn't too easy, but also where it's not too challenging when we want to give up. So if we can consistently reach that state of mind, we will get better. Of course, there are a ton of other strategies and frameworks for learning difficult subjects. I won't go into detail in this video, but we've made a lot of other content diving into study skills and learning science to help you out, so definitely check those out after this. So let's say you went through the entire framework. There was a good reason for taking the class, but you identified that the material, not the classroom, was the pain. And you've given an honest effort to learn it and you still don't like the class. Well, maybe you should drop the class. And there shouldn't be any shame or guilt in dropping a class. It's actually a really good thing. A lot of students forget that school is supposed to be about self-discovery. You found something you don't enjoy. That's perfect. Move on and keep searching for learning opportunities that excite you. That's what we encourage at Cajun Koi Academy. It's why we match into clubs to understand our behaviors and tendencies so we can live more intentionally. So if that's something that interests you and you want to learn more about what your student brain type is, then you're gonna want to watch this video right here.